Loot, loot, and more loot. Sounds fun, right? It must, because for the past couple of decades, games have been shoving a ton of loot down our throats. And there is no game franchise in history responsible for more loot drops than Diablo. And along with Warcraft and Starcraft, Diablo gave birth to the rise of Blizzard Entertainment in the 1990s, a company that has since created some of the most legendary and influential video games of all time. But due to this legendary status, it can feel a little intimidating to get started for the first time. I've never played a Diablo game before, and I was definitely a little worried I wouldn't have a clue what to do going into Diablo 4. But despite my inexperience, I found it to be pretty easy to get into, so I thought it might be interesting for me to make a video coming at this game from a new player's perspective. Now having 2 beta tests under my belt, I think I've made my decision as to whether or not I'll be buying the game, and as someone who has never played the Diablo games before, or really any other ARPG, I thought my opinion might mean something to someone else trying to make the same decision. I'm sure there are plenty of people out there that are just like me, so I wanted to give this one a go to see what I think about it. So we'll start by answering a simple question. What do you do in Diablo? Really, the answer seems simple. You just run around killing stuff, looting new gear, and leveling up your character. Just like any other RPG, basically. Every time you level up, you have the choice of either upgrading one of your existing abilities or unlocking a new ability for your character. So yeah, it's basically like every other RPG. It's a pretty simple leveling system, to be honest, at least in the early game. The thing that sets Diablo apart is the sheer amount of options it gives you to play how you want. Each of the 5 characters has dozens of different abilities, each have their own upgrades too, like I mentioned. And this is what makes Diablo so replayable. You can just keep making new characters to try out new stuff, so there's almost an unlimited number of ways that you can build your character and try different things. It's pretty awesome, and I have to imagine that the amount of options you'll get to play around with will only increase with time, obviously, as the game gets older and they add more content. The combat is fast and fluid, and you can really feel your character getting stronger as you progress. It's a really awesome gameplay loop, and it's really rewarding and it's addicting for sure. I do have a few small complaints about it. It might just be because I've been playing through Elden Ring for an upcoming video, but I just found myself wishing that the game was a little bit more challenging. When I did my Barbarian playthrough, I found the difficulty to be a little bit more enjoyable because the Barbarian sucks, but not by that much. It was still pretty easy for the most part, other than the Den Mother. I hate the Den Mother. The Den Mother can get fucked. Now, in fairness, the beta tests only gave you access to World Tier 2 at a maximum, and the full game will give you World Tier 3 and 4, which are going to be more difficult and give you access to better loot drops and faster leveling, and I think unlocking these will make the game a lot more fun, so I'm looking forward to doing that in the full release. The game features a pretty standard narrative that you'd expect if you're familiar in any way with the Diablo franchise. A demon woman named Lilith is spreading hell through the world, which is called Sanctuary, but realistically, we aren't really here for the story. What you'll actually spend most of your time doing is grinding dungeons and fighting bosses. And this game does this pretty well. Although I do wish the objectives had a bit more variety. It's basically go here, kill these guys, and then kill the big guy. That's how most of the dungeons go. There are some where it's like, go here and find this stuff and put it there, and then kill the big guy. It's really simple, and it can feel a little bit repetitive, but the dungeons do look really nice, and like I mentioned before, the combat in this game is really fun, so it's not that big of a deal. I also think that it's fair to expect that there will be more variety in the full version of the game, so I'm not that worried about this. The enemy design is also pretty much what you'd expect. It's a standard fantasy world with all the usual enemies, skeletons, demons, ghouls. It's all here, and they all look great. However, at least in the beta, there are only a small handful of different types of enemies, and then there's just larger versions of those enemies with different names and some slightly different abilities. I did think they looked pretty cool, but there aren't that many of them. But the beta only allows you to explore a small portion of the full map, so I have to imagine there will be more interesting stuff to find in the full game. The game does feature some pretty cool bosses. I enjoyed the few bosses that were available in the beta, besides the Den Mother, and I imagine that in the full game there will be a ton more variety there as well. Many of the bosses can make it feel like you're playing like a bullet hell game, constantly dodging between their shots. I thought this was fun, but I wasn't really expecting this. Some of them can be a little tedious, but overall, I really enjoyed the boss fights, and I'm looking forward to doing many more of them when the full game releases. The game also features something called world bosses, which are effectively just massive raid bosses that spawn in the open world. They have timed spawns, so you can meet up there with other players playing in the same instance as you to fight the boss with them. I did complete the world boss in the beta, but I am a dumbass and I didn't record it, so here's some footage I borrowed from somebody else doing it. I personally thought this was a really fun experience. I know there were a lot of complaints about this, especially with the second beta test where you could only level up to level 20, but the boss is still level 25 just to make it harder and more of a pain in the ass. But even still, I had fun with it, and I usually don't like doing big multiplayer events like these. With games like this, I'm more of a single player kind of guy, but this was pretty cool. The way it works is you get 15 minutes to kill this boss after it spawns. It has a shitload of health, but you can die an unlimited amount of times as long as your equipment doesn't break. And I really like this because I'm trash, and it makes the game a lot less sweaty, so that was pretty cool. These bosses tend to drop the best loot too, so I expect to be doing many more of these once the game drops. I think Diablo IV looks great. For starters, I think the lighting is done brilliantly. The way that the sun and moonlight reflects on the packed ice on the roads in the starter area is your first taste of this system, but it does a great job everywhere else in the game too. All of the cities look really nice, but I think the wilderness perhaps looks even better. I think the dungeons take the cake though. While I didn't really care for the objective design, in my playthrough I visited tons of different types of dungeons. Everything from simple underground caverns to massive lavish castles were present just in the beta test. I'm really excited to see what else will be available for us to explore in the full game. And I realize that this stuff is basically just industry standard as far as the graphics are concerned, but it's just refreshing to see this level of graphical fidelity in an isometric game like this. Most games that have this camera angle go with like a cartoon and stylized route, so I'm really glad that they went with this because I think it looks great. So Diablo IV features 5 different classes. You have the Rogue, the Druid, the Sorcerer, the Necromancer, and the Barbarian. Each class comes complete with its own massive skill tree with dozens of skills and abilities to unlock. I did 3 characters in the most recent server slam, so I'll go through my thoughts on those characters now. My first playthrough was with the Sorcerer, and this character is correct. You get so many cool abilities to throw around, even at level 20, and so long as you can manage your mana, you can feel basically unstoppable with this character. My favorite ability was probably Hydra, which spawns a group of these dragon things that come out of the ground and breathe fireballs. Sorcerer was definitely the most effective class I played as, without a doubt. After Sorcerer, I played as the Barbarian, and this class sucks huge mouse balls. You're really limited by the fact that you have virtually no ranged abilities at all, at least at level 20. It's possible that later in the game you get better abilities, but at level 20 you got no range. So the closest I could get was this one where you stick your weapon in the ground and fling rocks towards something in front of you. But even this wasn't enough for me to defeat the Den Mother, which was a major pain in the dick. I'll say it one more time. Fuck the Den Mother. I found the Barbarian to be fun to play, but they weren't strong in many situations, which at times was frustrating. My final playthrough was with the Rogue, and this was my favorite to use out of the bunch. I didn't find them to be quite as strong as the Sorcerer, but they were definitely better than the Barbarian, and more importantly, they were just a blast to play. You get a pretty unique kit, so you're like teleporting around, backstabbing enemies, shooting your bow and arrow, throwing knives at stuff. It's just a cool class, and it's a lot of fun to play, and I expect that this will be the class that I choose first going into the full game. Each class in Diablo IV has its own unique weapons and armor pieces to go along with it. From the rogue short swords and crossbows to the sorcerer's wands and staffs, there was a ton of variety to choose from even in the beta. The different weapons don't feel any different from one another, at least within their own class, but they do buff the stats behind your abilities as you would expect. And they do look a lot different from one another, which is perhaps the thing about this game that I like the most. There were a ton of different cosmetic options even just in the beta build. Once you find a weapon or armor piece and salvage it at a blacksmith, you can then transmog the look of that in your wardrobe. So you can force the look of one item onto every other item in the game, and this is just the best feature for customization in video games. If you're like me and you love customizing stuff, which you probably are, this is my favorite thing in every video game. I loved having a similar system in the newer Assassin's Creed games, and I'm super stoked that it's here in Diablo IV too. I'm not sure if this was a thing in previous Diablo games, but regardless, I'm happy to see it here. And once you unlock the ability to transmog a certain piece of armor, in most cases you can also dye it, so you can change the color of each individual piece of armor on your character. And just overall, this whole cosmetic system is just so cool, and you can tell by the amount of locked items that there are, that there will be a ton of content to unlock once the full game drops next month. And as the game progresses, with it being a games as a service game, there will be a lot of content to get through, which I'm actually a little bit excited about, although I wish it was free, but it won't be, and I'm gonna have to be okay with that. The game also features a pretty decent, like, base character customization system right from the start. It's a little bit rudimentary, but for each class, you can change the skin tone, eye and hair color, body type, and a bunch more like tattoos and piercings. And most of the stuff is customizable after you create your character too, which is awesome to see. And with all this, plus the armor and weapon customization, I'm just really excited to see what will be possible in the full version of the game. I have to imagine that all the late game items will look super cool and provide you with a bunch of awesome ways to customize your character. All of this sounds great, but like I mentioned a few seconds ago, there is obviously going to be a dark side to this too. For starters, we all know what happened with Diablo Immortal.
Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah, you guys.
I do have a suspicion that over time, Diablo 4 will become more and more like that, and it will become more predatory with its microtransactions. I'm reminded of the fact that Blizzard released Overwatch 2 as basically just a greedy monetization overhaul of Overwatch 1, and now they canceled PvE, which is... I could make a whole video on that by itself. That is the stupidest, most brainlet-ass move a company could possibly make, and Blizzard did it. So I have a low amount of faith in their ability to continue monetizing Diablo 4 after its release without it being kind of predatory. I'm just going to be honest. I expect this game to have bad monetization practices right out of the gate. And I have to imagine that those practices will worsen over time as more casual players and especially as more media outlets lose interest in this game. So I would just keep that in mind before making any kind of purchasing decision here because, like you, Blizzard hasn't given me a reason to trust them.
No, it's a fully.
So Blizzard has made clear that the game will feature a standard run-of-the-mill battle pass system, and this is fine with me. I guess it has to be fine with me. I don't mind battle passes in games if they provide the right level of value. I would rather this content be free, especially because I need to pay for this game, but that was never going to happen with it, so I'm just going to have to deal with it. Now, importantly, from what I gather, the Battle Pass will include premium currency. My hope is going to be that you can use that premium currency to continue purchasing future Battle Passes. It is important to note that Overwatch 2 does not offer you this ability. So based on that, it's hard to promise whether or not you'll be able to purchase future Battle Passes with the currency you earn in them, meaning you really only need to buy it once. This is how most games work, but because Overwatch 2 doesn't work this way, I'm worried that Blizzard will do the same thing with Diablo 4, meaning that you need to buy a new battle pass once every 3 or 4 months, as opposed to just buying the first one and then recycling your coins for each future iteration. Other than the battle pass, this game will include an item shop for microtransactions, which again, is disappointing, but it's what we should expect. Blizzard promises that these will be cosmetic only and that the game will not include pay-to-win mechanics. For those who are unaware, in Diablo Immortal, higher loot drop rates are literally locked behind absolutely massive paywalls. Players have spent tens of thousands of dollars maxing out their characters in this game due to that system, and Blizzard is very clearly trying to instill confidence that this will not happen in Diablo 4, and I hope this is true. But like I said before, it's worth keeping in mind that this company has employed some absolutely insane monetization tactics in other games in the past, specifically other games in the Diablo franchise, so the same thing could happen here given the passage of time. And with all of that said, I think as long as Blizzard can keep pay-to-win mechanics out of Diablo 4, I think they're going to have a solid product on their hands here. They appear to have a really long life cycle for this game planned, which I'm really excited about. I think it means that there's going to be plenty of awesome content to get through for this game for years to come, and this will be great for players as long as they keep garbage monetization systems out of it, which is up in the air at this point. I think it's safe to say that even if you've never played Diablo before, this game will be pretty easy for you to jump into and enjoy. There is a lot to learn, but you can learn it pretty quickly and you'll have fun while doing that. I think if you're a fan of looter shooters like Borderlands or Destiny, you'll really enjoy this game. And really, I think that there's a lot to like about this game no matter who you are. Getting cool loot is one of the best things about video games, and that's what Diablo is all about. But for now, that's pretty much all I have to say about this game. Let me know in the comments what you think about Diablo 4, and specifically whether you're as concerned as I am about the monetization strategies Blizzard will employ for this game. I'm a little worried about it, I have to be honest, and I'm concerned that they're going to make me regret my purchase, but I guess we'll see what happens when the game comes out. But that's all I got for you for now. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.
Right, don't put too much weight on it, right?
Where the fuck am I meant to put my weight? Mate, I can't put my weight in the roof, it's dead fun, I can't